Well, how's everybody doing? This is Vinnie, and this is The World According to Vinnie. This is a special edition of The World According to Vinnie. Um, saw an article a little bit ago. Article was talking about, what states and locals and what they can do to, for the next election to kind of make sure the elections are, you know, fair and the rolls. You may have heard me talk about the voter rolls. I think they need to, clean them up, maybe even delete them and start fresh. But this article was, it was actually in the Daily Signal, February 2nd of 21. Hans Von Spakovsky wrote this article, and thought it was pretty interesting and wanted to kind of share it. Kind of went through some of the things I've already talked about. But the Heritage Foundation is a group. They looked at election fraud, a database they have, which chronicled they have over 1,300 cases of different election fraud. Proves that election fraud does occur every year. Some are bigger than others, as we kind of seen some things that were kind of a little out of the ordinary. But it happens. But it doesn't have to be this way. States can and should take some action to restore the integrity of the elections. And here's just a list. There's 9 things that I'm going to go through. I'm going to try to upload the sheet so you can see them as I go through. We'll see if that works or not. But I'm going to go through it. First of all, number 1 is the verify the accuracy of voter registration, the list. And there's computerized statewide voter registration lists that should be designed to work together, communicate seamlessly with the other state record databases. So when you have a change that happens, they can compare the information. For example, when an individual changes the residency for his or her driver's license, that information should be sent to the state election officials so that the voter registration address of the individual is also changed to his or her new Department of Motor Vehicle residence address. So that would eliminate voting in different counties, different states, and those things. Great idea. Indiana did it like 4 or 5 years ago. I wish all states will do this. Number 2 is verify citizenship of voters. This is a, duh. But only lawful citizens can vote in federal elections. Now, I think like California, other states, you can, if you're a resident but you're not a citizen, I think they allow on local election. But this is federal. You should be a citizen to vote for the federal law officers. And to verify citizenship, they can use Department of Homeland Security, including the e-verifying system I think they use for employment, I believe. So that would be number 2. Number 3, require voter ID. I don't know how many states has that. There's quite a few. Indiana's one. But a voter should be required to validate their identity with a government-issued photo ID, driver's license, and even for absentee voters. And actually, states like Alabama and Kansas, they do require this. It should be, if you can't afford it, it should be free to get a state ID. One thing that I'm going to talk about on that is, I've been hearing, you always hear, well, that's just not fair to the minorities. Minorities, they can't get their IDs. And I sat there and went, wait a minute. If that's kind of discriminating. You're discriminating against minorities. It's almost, you're kind of being racist that a minority isn't able to get an ID. It just doesn't make sense when they say that hurts people voting. I'm sorry, it doesn't. You can get an ID. You almost have to have an ID for everything. So I don't, when you hear someone use that argument, I laugh, and my statement now will be, oh, so you'd like to discriminate against others. I mean, it just makes no sense. I mean, it kind of almost seems that you're being racial and racist. I mean, they blame everybody else doing it. I think that almost is. So that's crazy. Number 4 would be limit absentee ballots. Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with absentee ballots, but it should be for those individuals who are too disabled to vote in person, or will be out of the town or on election day and on early voting. So if you work overseas or you're working out of the state and you can't get back to vote even on those days that they have early voting, absolutely, absolutely you should be able to do an absentee vote. But we also need to make sure those absentee votes are accurate and the person that vote is the one. And if you remember, Georgia was a complete cluster, and they didn't follow the rules by the state, and that's the problem. So we need to make sure that's done. Number 5, prevent vote trafficking. Now that term I haven't heard, but if you look in the article, it's actually, you've heard voting harvesting. And that's by when a third-party group, they should be banned, because those groups, like campaign staffers, party activists, political consultants, they should be prohibited from picking up those, potentially mishandling or changing the absentee ballots. They can coerce people. Heard where they were paying people money and beers and to get a vote. It's crazy. Political groups can't offer to pick up ballots. They can't bring them to the polling place, mail them. No third party supervising that group's behavior should be done. If you're going to do absentee ballot, you need to do the proper thing, sign it, and make sure it's done in through the mail. That just seems simple to me. I don't understand what the problem is. Number 6, allow election observers to complete access to the entire election process. You heard a lot of stuff about that where they were not letting people within 25 or 50 feet. Sometimes they told them to go home and they still counted ballots. That has got to stop. It just, I've worked the polls here in New Albany, and I couldn't tell you who the Democrat or Republican. We just don't have those issues. Everybody worked together. Everybody, the judges and the clerks, I couldn't tell you which one was. I was representing Republican, but I think the guy, they were Democrats. We were all working together. The job was to make sure we helped them get into the voting booths and understand the machines and get their votes counted, and we moved on. So they should be allowed to look at everything, except like when they're, to be involved closely on counting. They should be observing, not to count. They should be allowed to look at that. They should be legally allowed to be in a position, exactly like an election official, to observe everything going on other than the actual voting by individuals. To me, that just seems simple. Number 7 was provide voter assistance. Now, we were doing voting assistance when people didn't understand how to use the machine, or what's this mean, or how to go back on the machine. Anyone providing that assistance should be, I guess, to complete a form, or like in our case, we were already verified as election officials. But if they have anybody that comes with them, I think we need to make sure we find out who they were, get their address, get their information to verify, to make sure everything's good, and look at a photo ID to make sure that is the person that say they are. Number 8, prohibit early vote counting. Now, you've probably seen on TV, they were talking about, there's a huge amount of there's a huge amount of Republicans that voted. They knew. You know what? That shouldn't happen. Counting of ballots, including absentee and early votes, should not begin until the polls close at the end of Election Day. That's how it was when I was in Indianapolis years ago. We waited, and then we put, as everybody watched, we put those ballots in that were absentee or provisional. We did all that. However, if the state insists on beginning the count before Election Day, it should be banned the release of the results until the evening of Election Day, subject to criminal penalties. And I think what they're saying is, if you're getting off work at 4 o'clock, you've got a couple or 2-3 hours to go to vote, and then you hear your candidate is way behind or way ahead, you may go, what's the point? Well, the point is, you don't really know how many people has voted from different parts of that city or county or state. So you don't want to, give any type of a reason for a voter not to say, well, I need to vote. So I just think that's what needs to happen. Number 9, provide state legislators with legal standing. You may have read where the Supreme Court said, or the state Supreme Courts would say, well, you don't have any legal standing. Well, legislators must ensure that they have legal standing through specific state law, constitutional amendment, if that's required, to give them the right to sue state officials and governors or secretaries of state who make attempt to do unauthorized changes with the state laws. Only legislators can do that. But as you can see, there were several states that election officials went, nope, we're changing it. Like a Secretary of State extends the deadline of the state law for the receipt of absentee ballots. Legislators should have legal standing to contest that and to make sure whatever the law states, if it is on election day, as it should be, they have plenty of time to send that absentee vote in. It shouldn't be 3, 6, 30 days after. I mean, that's what was going on. We just got to make sure that's even. And everyone should be able to do that. And we should have recourse. So if a citizen wants to do that, they need to have the right to go to court and say, that's wrong. In 2020, Pennsylvania Secretary of State Kathy Brookvar made changes to election law unilaterally. We need to ensure that can't happen again in other states or in future elections. Along with those 9 reforms, there are specific measures that states should not take. For instance, there should be no same-day registration for voting. If you want to vote, in Indiana, I think it was 30 days. We had some people come in and said, well, I registered 2 days ago. Well, I'm sorry. You've got to give them time, the election officials, to verify those people, to make sure, do they live at that address? Do they have an ID? Those things to make sure those people are legally able to vote in that city, state, or county election. There should be automatic voter registration, or send out mass ballots to everyone they think's on the voter rolls. That turned into a complete disaster. How about we go to where you go on election day, or if you're not going to be there, you get an absentee ballot and you vote that way. But when you just wholesale register everyone as a voter, there you go. And then if the voter trafficking or the harvesting comes in play there, that just turns things into controversy. And it would just be best if we all would vote and everyone would go, yep, that's good. They should just not automatically be able to do that. One thing I'm going to be doing is I will be taking this article and I'm going to send it to my local, state, local, and representatives, and to put that in. And whatever Indiana doesn't have, or in your state, make sure that we're doing these things to make sure everybody feels their vote and other votes are legal and counted properly. That's all we really need to do. That's the whole point in this. We're not, what's in the past is in the past, the way I look at it. It's 2022's coming in, and then the presidential in 2024. I just want to make sure those elections are done properly, and the states need to stand up and say, enough's enough. This is the state law. This is what we're going to do. Doesn't that make sense? Well, this is Vinnie, and this is the world according to Vinnie. And I just wanted to put this out for everybody. Hope you be safe. Please go and subscribe on my channel and put a comment in there if you would about what I've talked about today, and hit the little bell, the notification, so you know when I speak. You want to check it out. I appreciate you sharing it too. So this is Vinnie, and this is the world according to Vinnie, and I will be talking to you very soon. Take care.